Hello, Dr. Mike here. This is for my Series 2 Cybersecurity series, and this is on Topic 14 on business continuity and change management. This is Chapter 6 in our new textbook of the same name. And I will say this, I think I started the previous video, there's a lot between Chapter 5, Risk Management and Change Management. So again, I'm going to cut to a previous series, Series 1. It's the same material. But there's some stuff for that would be considered Chapter 5 material inside there. But again, there's a huge overlap with this. It's hard to not talk about change management and business continuity without it being part of risk management. So, and same with vulnerability assessment. So, a lot of overlap between these two, but this is going to really focus on Chapter 6 as much as possible. Again, I'm going to talk about the new chapter, highlight some stuff I think is important to talk about. But I will cut to the previous video, and it will talk about the same topics here. So, not talk about why change management. I think that's pretty straightforward. There's some things here, of course, that go back to old days of accounting. For example, separation of duties. This is an accounting thing. So, example, accounts receivable person cannot access accounts payable, and vice versa. So, certain managers can't sign certain things. And this is really like, it could be HR level, it could be department procedures. This is nothing to do with specifically IT in general. These are just procedures in general, how you operate as a company. So those should be part of your assessment. We look at change management and disaster recovery. So, and also goes into, again, risk management. So again, change management, I'm going to cut to a video where we talk about this. And actually have show examples of software I've used in the past, previous companies that we use for configuration management and change management. So again, and this does go into the risk management portion about configuration auditing, identification of your assets, and even goes back to previous videos we talked about when you do baselining for your operating systems. So again, you're going to see a lot of topics filter in from previous chapters and previous topics in this course. So, which makes sense because this really is more of a management level topic. So it's going to have to include those. Auditing, can't say any more. Physical, functional auditing, it's a huge part of it. If you're not auditing what you have and what's doing, it's going to be hard to manage it, and it's going to be hard to manage risk as well as just manage it as change to it. So. All right, so software change control. Again, change management workflows. Look at that in the book. I'm not going to go over it here. There's a lot of stuff, different software, different methods you use for change management. Project management here is going to be a huge key. I think I spent a small stint as a project manager. It wasn't really for me, but I worked with project managers, and when they're good, I tell you, they're fantastic to work with, and they make this type of stuff easy. So a lot of times you might want to have a project management, change management team that you will work with. But if you're a really small company, you could be doing, the Gantt charts, PERT charts, all that stuff from the previous chapter, or planning for change. So understand some of these things is good to know, and just have a process is really the biggest thing. Have some process down. It doesn't have to be perfect, but if you just do things haphazardly, it's going to become a problem. So again, change management process. There's software you can help you do this. I'll talk about that in the upcoming cut. I will drop in here in a second. All right, so enough of that. Second part of this chapter, of course, is disaster recovery, DRP, disaster recovery planning. Probably the biggest thing here is backups. So when you think disaster recovery, think backups, and not just backups of your data, backups of, it could be hardware backups. It could be backups of entire data centers. It could be if you're doing cloud computing. Do we have a failover region in case, Amazon, Virginia region goes down? We fell over to Amazon Central region or something like that. Do we have different regions we use with our cloud providers? And again, you would categorize that item and figure out what does it do and how can we back it up. So it needs to be backed up, data applications. Here you go. This is a pretty good business continuity plan here. Again, I talk about BCPs in a little bit. I'll probably be a little redundant here. I'll just say this. You could do all the backups in the world, even personally, but until you actually practice recovering that backup and verify it works, really haven't completed the whole process. There's nothing worse than your database gets corrupt, the server crashes, something like that. You bring up a new server, you walk through it, and you recover the latest backup and find out it's been corrupt for the past 2 weeks. You've lost 2 weeks of data. So BCP planning should have some sort of recovery process, and also you'll see here in the chapter, test, exercise, and rehearse. That's probably one of the best things I can say is go through those procedures. Have someone who's a brand new employee at the level 1 help desk get the call, start the procedure, walk through it, do this with a test system. Have a test copy production running. It gets blanked. You got to go through and recover a copy of it. Or if you're working with a cloud provider, what do you do when something happens? And that's something that can be anything. It could be also ones if you got hacked. This is some examples here. Like if you work with cloud, and you think, well, just get rid of the cloud server that's been hacked. Well, you might lose logs. Those logs are part of your incident response team. So policies and procedures are huge. And there's some good stuff in the chapter to talk about that. And I think I basically covered most of the chapter. Let's talk about cloud computing. Good. Cloud computing is a huge part of this. On-premise, you might have some on-premise systems and some cloud. You might not be able to use the same procedure for both. Keep that in mind. So, and of course, you want to build in high availability and fault tolerance in your systems themselves. So this goes back to architectural design. If you don't plan for failure at that level, it's going to be hard to sort of retroactively engineer it in later. Cloud gives you a little more options here. It's nice. You can decouple stuff, do this type of stuff with the cloud. Whereas if you have on-premise hardware you've purchased and you haven't did this in the beginning, it's going to take time and money to go back and retroactively put it in play. So good chapter. Again, I'm going to cut to the series here. It's going to really go over the same stuff in the chapter as well as a couple other topics that might be inside there. Anyways, here it comes. Thanks. And so change management is a good one here. So how do we manage change? And this is a big deal because a lot of times risk does get creeped in from some changes. We update we want to buy new servers. We want to update to the latest OS on our desktops, things like that. We need to have a plan for that. And you need a plan for change itself. So first off, got some tools here. There's the US CERT site's got some great tools here. Cyber Resiliency Review. They have documents such as this. This is brand new MITRE ATT&CK framework infographic they just put out. I just downloaded it to look it over. Mapping techniques. So there's stuff that you can grab. It could be as simple as this, just a review, look it over. It could be a guideline to help you look down over here to PDFs, access management, control management, configuration change management. That's again right there. There you go. So again, maybe you don't need to have to fall under CERT guidelines, but you find yourself lacking any kind of documentation. You start here. You can look for here. Where you begin, right? Define roles and responsibilities. It's a good point right there. We never think about who's in charge of what, and it should be documented, right? This goes back to the management thing. Just a lack of organizational management. Who has the final say-so when signing off on risk? People say, "Well, I think the CIO does." Yeah, but what about the CISO? What about the executive manager for the department? This should be clearly documented. So, because I can sign for that risk, and actually they can't. And you can see the issues here. So, CERT's a great resource. Again, here I am again. Yes, Dr. Mike Sprinkham, NIST again. 853. This is again for federal, but it's security and privacy controls. And for manage MIS, so I think this is 128. Yeah, this is 53. 128, get the wrong one up here, is the publication for configuration management. This should be part of definitely of any of your vulnerability assessments, how you manage your configuration, and this rolls into our change management system. So again, there's a lot of different information out here you can refer to. CIS, SANS probably has reading room stuff on it. That's a pretty cool graphic there on minor tech framework. Again, stuff you can find here on CERT. But and this is one I've used here. So here's an example. Change management. You don't have to use this. I bring up Jira because it's been in a lot of places I worked. This is like the main area. And I know it talks about agile teams. But it has this sort of hub of planning change, planning and tracking, what's going to the next release. But inside of here are things like, hey, is the server being patched? I found a cross-site scripting vulnerability in our web page. How do you get that change in? And more important, you just don't fix it. You just don't change the code in production. You just don't upgrade everyone's desktop to the latest version of Windows. Especially if it's mission critical, you test it. So just change management has a way to go ahead and plan, track, and release, and also have a plan to roll back. Very important. I've seen it before in production releases for a company I used to work at full time. They would part of their planning was, okay, first has it been approved? Yes, it's been approved by whoever or what level needs to sign off on it. It has all the details. It's been tested. Now, what's the plan to roll back if it still breaks? It doesn't matter how much you test. When it comes to actually putting that code on live production, stuff happens. So, and this information here, stuff can roll back into our vulnerability assessment, business continuity planning, our risk assessments. What do we have? What version? What patch? This is to be used also to show that we have something in place for change management. So I use Jira. There's open source. There's a ton of different stuff here. It's just one I've used a lot. You can create these roadmaps and plans. These are important to have, whether it be in Jira or just Microsoft project, I think it was, whatever you use, a Visio diagram. What's upcoming? Because you might spot something on cybersecurity and go, whoa, that looks like a pretty big risk. We have a plan to change something. And yeah, we're testing these aspects, but no one has addressed testing security. So this could be brought to light early. If it's found early, and especially design, it can be fixed and tested cheaper than it is to roll it out and fix it later, or even worse, have it be discovered later by an attacker. So change management is going to be a real huge area here, and this is really what this is about. Most of my lecture here is going to be about change management, because the rest of the chapter itself really does cover things we sort of already talked about. Managing risk, threat assessments, risk assessment, troubleshooting common security issues. This is good stuff in the chapter here. Definitely look it over. I'm not going to read it to you, but look at the summary though. So again, look at the rest of the slide deck here, which is only a few more slides left. Again, changes to system architecture, changes to file or documentation classifications. Again, understand change. Really, that's what it comes down to. And change management team. This is where a good project manager is worth their weight in gold. Someone can help make sure that everyone's checking the right boxes, doing the right things. So also, who has the final approval of these changes? Again, you might see people from all areas, not just IT. You might have network security. You might have cybersecurity, forensics. Maybe might be inside there. Accounting, HR. There's a lot of areas that come into play here. So each change, the change management team might have reps from different areas that may not all weigh in each change, but they will at least have a visibility to those changes. So privilege management. This is really back. This slide really goes back into I'm trying to say, trying into authorization and management. So I don't know why this is out here, but it should be something that should be audited. That's probably the important thing as part of this change. Auditing is very important. So with a good incident response management, has good handling, has good documentation, and it's been audited. Again, that goes back to auditing. We'll come back to that in a second. But you can see there's an incident framework in place. And this sort of goes in hand with our JIRA or whatever our change management system is. Sometimes you'll have in here ways to do tickets. Tickets for like, I need to open a new issue, like issues. So and then the issues get rolled automatically in. And so it's seamless. So help desk has found an issue, a customer called in, there's an error on a page. The issue rolls in, it gets examined, and it gets examined and found that, well, that error also could be used maliciously. So now we see there's a cybersecurity slant to this issue. Maybe not, but again, at least everyone has eyes on that issue when it comes in, and then it can be rolled, prioritized, and rolled into upcoming changes. So I'm going to skip over this. I talked about this already. It's in the chapter. Again, it's hard to quantify, use hard numbers. There's times it's going to be up to the team, and it's if that team changes, the numbers might change over time. Better to have something in place than not have this at all, though. Talked about this already. Risk impacts. This is actually pretty good, and this is really should have been back in the previous chapter also when it comes to business continuity planning and even vulnerability assessments. But what's our loss expectancy? If we lose it once, we lost the server, so that's $5,000 gone. But also, what's the loss over time? Well, that server being down every day, we lose X amount of money. So, and this is going to help you in your risk matrix. You'll have that. These two calculations could be part of that. So, again, approaching risk. This is a review. Uses sort of controls in place to mitigate them, and implementation automation and so on. There's some approaches here. The good one here is administrative controls and technical controls. This is actually a good slide. Again, for previous chapters, not everything from a pen test or from a business continuity assessment will be hey, we got to patch, patch the operating system. We got to fix this bug because it causes a SQL injection. Something could be, hey, no one is giving training on the fact that people are opening up attachments on email that says, free Amazon card.exe. And that comes to light during your assessments. You go, well, we need to put a control in place. That control could be training. And of course, maybe documentation. And it's best to have these trainings, especially anything with security, be very granular. The idea would be watch this 3-minute video about don't open attachments and take this 2 or 3 question quiz. If you get it wrong, you can take it over and over again until you get it right. Usually online. And it sounds sort of childish in a way, but it's perfect because when this person logs in with their account, maybe they approach the website and they get a single sign-on, SSO. SAML has them already authenticated. When they take this quiz, they say, good, okay, cool. We now have our audit record saying you, employee X, have watched the video and you passed the quiz. So you understand not to open that attachment. This could go later on for ISO compliance or, showing that you have trained and you can track who's been trained, who hasn't been trained, and so on. So these administrative controls, one being security policies. Do we have policies in place for that? So I know this class, there's a lab in place where you actually will create policies, and actually we'll look at SANS. SANS has templates you can download and use to create a policy. So you don't have to start by scratch here. All control types aren't just administrative. There's physical controls. Do we need to put another lock on the door? And administrative would be also who owns the key, tracking who has the key, access to who has the key, tracking often we change the key, and then verifying that lock is correct and has been breached. So detective controls and so on. And again, I talked about already, transference, mitigation, or avoidance. I really call it also acceptance is one of them, dealing with risk. Probably important thing here is automation. There's a lot of stuff that goes on here. And this is where if you have a central control like this in place, maybe Jira, and you have a central logging server that's also producing logs, maybe a dashboard using like Splunk or something like that, or maybe a high-end, more expensive commercial tool that could produce alerts and reports. You have a lot of information you can use to find, is there trends going on? We constantly getting, an error in a certain server or a certain part of our network always going down. It's causing issues here. Again, look at our choke points. Look at those single points of failure. So in any case, automation of these systems is very important. You don't want had to be done manually if all possible. Good example. Network diagram. So you're a brand new security analyst, and you find out, the network engineer had created this great visual diagram with all the network. Well, that's perfect. I need that so I can, assess risk to our network. Come to find out they did it manually 4 years ago, and it hasn't been updated since. So how good is that document now? How good is that artifact? It's basically useless. And I myself have created tons of all kinds of documents on something that I never updated anymore. They become, over time, less and less useful. Automation of these things. I can open up an app or a web page that has gone through and has got the latest Nmap scan in XML format, and it puts in a nice presentable format. And I can automatically get that and say, okay, this is from last night's Nmap scan. I can use this to look for certain ports that are open that shouldn't be open. So you want the automation as much as possible. Again, automation provides a lot of great. The thing is, this is it provides the fact that especially if it's tedious work, you don't want to have someone sit down and create that visual diagram once and have to go through once a month and find all the servers and validate it. It's that tedium can leave room for human error, which can leave room for issues to arise. So continuous monitoring is the best if at all possible. So, we do that, of course, for servers, but there's little artifacts like architectural diagrams, things like that sort of never get updated. So configuration is one of them. You can have in this example. There's a configuration report. I know you can pull, like in Amazon, you can pull this information automatically, and that's awesome. You want that. You want it to be automatically pulled, and you can bring this in, and you can probably even compare this against previous or a known good baseline. And you can see there's a compliant no. User profile has been changed. This is fantastic. So a good example of this was the old Tripwire. I don't know if it's still around. Tripwire app for Linux. If someone changes, adds an account, it sends off an alert, but also I have a report saying this server had this file change. So for security, it's fantastic. You want these sort of configuration guidelines. You also want the ability to review configuration and look for these things right here. And again, not everything's malicious. It's just the fact that maybe there's a new server setup and someone forgot to do the profile correctly. So security policies. This is really the cornerstone. I know there's a lab for this course at the time of this recording again, where you create policies. So I'm not going to delve too much on them. You got to have policies for them, and most important is they got to be enforceable. You can't create a policy saying you don't download porn on the company server, company assets, desktop, laptops, whatever. And someone does it, and you go, "Oh, don't do that." Well, this is where HR will come in. You need to have a way to actually enforce this. And maybe it's not that. Maybe it's the fact you shouldn't have post-it notes with passwords on them. And you do a physical walk around every so often, you find one. You've got to have a way to enforce that. And especially if it's a place that's high security, those things could be of issue. So again, policies, pretty important. Look at the chapter. By the time you get to this part, the last very part of this last chapter, we've already talked about policies, but they should be very, don't make them very long. You don't want one policy that does everything. You want a policy for passwords that's short, easy to read, to the point, and then it has maybe references to best known practices. I'm going to go back and look at our OWASP has got those cheat sheets. So maybe use those cheat sheets to create a policy. Link back to that. That's great. You want to do that. You want to show that maybe you've used NIST. Say this document was generated from this NIST document. So when you do leave or you're not maybe on vacation, if someone wants to change that, they know that you sort of got that from a larger source. Even better, it looks good because you use these best known sources, NIST, OWASP, SANS, whatever. And you say, I went there, I looked at these best known practices, and here's what applies to us, and here's our policy as it comes to our passwords or whatever the policy you're talking about. So, and again, maybe there's a statement of enforcement inside there. And again, I'm going to move on past this here. All kinds of policies, acceptable use. A lot of policies are going to happen when someone is first employed. So that's pretty common, like, proper use of network, email, company resources. So usually there's some sort of physical signature, acceptance of those policies. But you got to deal with the fact there's new ones coming into play for all users, all employees. So you got to be able to communicate the policy and be sure that someone sees them and has read them. And this is where it goes back to, you need management support. You need to have a way to managers say, hey, part of your yearly review is that your security policies have been all read. You've done all the training. You've done that. You've done the 4 or 5 2-minute videos with 3 questions that would come out each year. And again, having that way to audit that, you can go back and check it. It gives the employees something they can say, yeah, I'm up to date. I keep up on all my internal training. Good. It's good for them. It looks good on their review. And then it sure looks good later for people to get audited as a company, maybe for an ISO or PCI compliance. You can show, yes, we have training, we have policies, we have ways to track that those policies have been read and understood by our employees. So that's where training comes in. Again, I think I already spoke to this. It is a key part of your of keeping security in place.